Hello, good evening, everyone. Hello. Hello, can anybody take this quiz? Hello, anyone is there? Can you hear me? Hello, Kalyan, Palak.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, who is taking this?
I will take, sir. It's Kalyan here, sir.
Yeah, please take.
This is an endole catheter angiogram done in AP view. The course of the catheter is from.
How do you know end hole catheter angiogram? Is it end hole catheter? Where is the contrast spilling?
It's spilling from the side port, sir.
Then why did you say end hole?
So
it is not end hole, it is side hole.
Yes,
okay?
Sir. Yes.
Okay, fine.
It's a angiogram done in AP view. The course of the catheter is from inferior femoral vein, inferior vena cava, then into right pulmonary vein. Not very clear whether it is a lower or upper. It appears like a upper pulmonary vein, sir. The contrast is filling right upper pulmonary vein, followed by IVC, and there is another channel which is filling, and the contrast is filling into the atrium, sir.
Which atrium? So where is the heart located?
There is a dextra position of the heart, sir.
Why dextra position?
It could be a variant of scimitar syndrome with
So then where is
right
the catheter actually, which is, where is it going from IVC to which part?
pulmonary vein, sir.
Pulmonary
Right.
vein. So
Yes, sir.
what you are showing is the vein which is draining into the inferior vena cava. What is this tortuous structure?
That could be another connection. Y-shaped connection in the scimitar vein.
To where? Where is it going?
It is going to LA, sir.
Which is going to LA. So what is the diagnosis of this?
So it is a scimitar syndrome with a double connection of scimitar vein, one to the IVC and another to the left atrium. Sir.
So it is a decompressing vein. So what do you do
Decompressing.
in this case? What is the treatment modality of scimitar syndrome in infants?
Sir, we should assess for even collateral, sir, and they are usually associated with bronchopulmonary collaterals to the right lower lobe or the right lung.
So I request Dr. Shweta to open her microphone and then camera also. Today's our guest faculty is Dr. Shweta from Rainbow Children Heart Institute. She is not a guest faculty. She is an organizing committee person in our hospital. So Dr. Shweta, open your microphone also and interact. To begin with, Dr. Shweta is going to interact with you guys today, and she is going to take a series of classes today. Probably I requested her to talk on some interactive quiz session on cardiomyopathy. Shweta, I request you to interact with Kalyan and discuss this particular thing, because Dr. Shweta has got really very good interest in this particular subset of population.
So, good evening, everybody. I hope all of you are safe during this tough time. So, I think, Kalyan, to start with, your description should go this way: that child is intubated. As you can see,
Yes,
there is a ATTU.
ATTU.
And then there is a dextroposition of the heart, and then
Yes, ma'am.
the catheter course. So, they are very obvious findings. So, you said that there is a scimitar variant. Why did you say it's entering into pulmonary vein? What made you to say that?
The catheter position is
Into the lungs?
into the lungs, ma'am.
But can it be into the PA? Because it's a dextrocardia. Is it possible it entered into the, the RA, RV? Because you can't orient yourself really here.
The course is almost, the catheter course is almost straight, ma'am.
Can you see when you have injected?
Yes, ma'am.
Then can you see that there is a capillary phase which is happening?
Yes, ma'am.
So that capillary phase is of pulmonary venous capillary phase. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And
Yeah.
then the blood is coming. There is a washout which is happening into the inferior vena cava.
Yeah. Yes,
So
ma'am.
the drainage is happening in this direction. So suppose it was a pulmonary artery, the blood would have flowed forward,
True.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes, ma'am.
then in levo phase, you will see the pulmonary venous phase. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yeah.
there is a capillary phase of this. The pulmonary venous capillary phase is seen here.
Okay, ma'am.
So as sir said, how will you manage this case? So you have to look for bronchopulmonary collaterals. You have to look for pulmonary artery hypertension. So
Yes,
if
ma'am.
they are asymptomatic and there is no PH, there is no heart failure, actually you can follow them up. You did not do anything.
Okay.
If they are symptomatic, then depending on if there is a PH, then you can close the collateral. And if there is a heart failure, then bronchopulmonary collaterals you can close. So that will partially benefit them. Some of them think that pneumonectomy also helps, but nothing is proven in this situation. So depending on the symptoms, you need to take a call in this substrate.
Okay, ma'am.
So let us go to, so sir, if you allow, should we move to the presentation?
Thank you very much, and I'm going to stop my screen share, and probably you can share your screen at this point of time.
Just let me see if I'm able to share or not. So I think I'm able to share. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So today I'm going to have the interactive session on treatable causes of cardiomyopathy, and the anomalies of aortic arch we will discuss day after tomorrow in another session. So as we all know that the in pediatric population of cardiomyopathy, it is quite rare. It is like 1 in 1 lakh population, but we often see in pediatric cardiology OP as a ventricular dysfunction cases, and then we need to look into its follow-up and the treatment options. If you don't treat it properly, the mortality is very high. The first year mortality is almost 70%, and 5-year mortality is another, it further increases. So the mortality is quite high in this situation, and the reasons are basically the arrhythmias, heart failure, thrombosis, comorbidities, renal dysfunction, and if it is associated with syndromes, then that may contribute to their ventricular their morbidity and mortality. But unlike adults, I would like to emphasize where adults it is most of the time ischemic cardiomyopathy or there might be a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. But in pediatric population, there are good number of substrates which has having secondary cardiomyopathy because there is some underlying structural cause, genetic cause, or there might be some metabolic cause which has lead to the ventricular dysfunction. So this talk basically emphasizes that don't label your cases as myocarditis or idiopathic cardiomyopathy, but to assess them in detail. So we'll take cases one by one. So this is an infant whose fetal scan was suggestive of dilated ductus. So a baby whose father is a radiologist did himself scan and said everything was normal. And in growth scan, that is at 33 weeks, he found out that there is a right heart dilatation and there is a dilated ductus. But during that time, he consulted gynecologist who said everything is fine and it should not be a problem with the baby. So child was delivered. It was full term delivery. Now again on follow up, around 2.5 months of age, father noticed that there is a breathlessness and he took to the pediatrician. So when baby came here, there was tachypnea, tachycardia, there was all features of heart failure, and you can see as the child is intubated, there is cardiomegaly and there is some evidence of pulmonary edema. So this was his echo that there is a severe ventricular dysfunction and left heart is dilated. So how would you take this? Someone can unmute and then try to attempt. They are all simple and our day-to-day life cases. Where is the chat box? Hello? Hello?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. So please tell me.
As we have a clinical scenario with a 2-month of baby who is presented with a severe heart failure and signs of congestive heart failure, so we should during his evaluation we should always think of treatable causes of ventricular dysfunction. So at infantile ventricular dysfunction, the treatable causes could be like we should get during ECG we should see for any tachycardiomyopathies, and during the echo evaluation, ma'am, we should see for coronary evaluation and also the arch evaluation.
Yeah, so rightly people have, I'm reading the chat box and rightly people have said that congenital aortic stenosis, coarctation and Al-Kappa should be ruled out. Now this is what his echo, there is a flow acceleration across the arch and you can see that the gradient is only 2.5 meters. So what do you want to do? You want to label this as a mild coarctation?
In presence of severe ventricular dysfunction, ma'am, the
Yeah.
gradient could be still can be underestimated, but the flow in the descending aorta should be assessed again, and it will be considered as a severe aortic severe coarctation.
So this should be considered as severe coarctation of aorta, as Kalyan is pointing out, because there is a severe ventricular dysfunction. So because of reduced ventricular function, the forward flow across the arch is reduced. And whenever you find a diastolic tailoring, as you can see here across the arch, that suggests that the coarctation is very significant. And that is the cause for its ventricular dysfunction. So then this baby underwent coarctation of aorta repair, and you can see that there is a good ventricular function soon after the follow-up. So, what do you learn from this? There was a fetal echo which was suggestive of dilated right heart and ductus. So, what happens in the fetal life? Because the ductus arteriosus is large, so you won't find gradient across the aortic arch like we see during the neonatal age. But instead of that, there will be right heart dilatation and ductus becomes more prominent. So, can somebody explain why there is a right heart dilatation in fetal life, in coarctation of aorta?
Good morning, ma'am. Palak here.
Yeah, Palak.
Ma'am, so in during fetal life, because of coarctation, the majority of the blood goes to the SVC, to the head and neck, and because of that, the return will be more as it is to the right heart will be more, as a result of which the RA and the RB are dilated if there is coarctation of the aorta.
So this is very interesting in fetal life. So left heart or the left ventricle supplies to the isthmus, okay, and right heart supplies distal to that. So actually, the left ventricle will be the facing to the obstructed area. But what happens because of the coarctation, more blood rather than going into the descending aorta, it is diverted towards the brain area, and that venous return is through SVC, and that comes into the RA and RV. So the SVC blood contributes for the right ventricular preload. So because the preload is more through the SVC return, the right heart is more dilated during fetal life. Even during after birth, the initial few days or few weeks, you may find the right ventricular dysfunction as more prominent than the left ventricular dysfunction. Like in older patient, if there is a coarctation of like here, when the baby is 2.5 months, we found out that there is a left ventricular dysfunction. But during neonatal age, first month of life, there is a possibility that you may find the right ventricular dysfunction instead of left because of the same reason. So obviously what was missed here is nobody palpated the femorals for 2.5 months. And despite of suspicion, the father had suspicion that the right heart is dilated, but still neonatal echo was not done. And dilated right heart and the ductus is a subtle sign of coarctation during fetal life. So if you get a report, try to look them into the fetal uh, during the neonatal age, those who had fetal diagnosis of right heart dilatation. Now, please see this next case, who is a 3-year-old girl who is admitted with again severe distress, very sick child. You can see the X-rays, grade 4 pulmonary edema. You can see bad lung appearance. There is mild cardiomegaly and severe pulmonary edema is there. There is S3 gallop and she was referred as myocarditis. There is low volume pulse. Blood pressure is 80/46. This is the echo of the child. There is a severe ventricular dysfunction. So as you can see here, the EF is only 20%. So after intubation, child became better. You can see that the lungs are opened up. There is mild cardiomegaly and urea, creatinine, ESR, everything is normal. And child got stabilized with the dobutamine, milrinone and Lasix. His blood pressure was 80/46. Now, after inotropes, that is dobutamine and milrinone, blood pressure started ranging in 95 to 99 centile. So what do you want to do next? How do you want to proceed it? There is a severe ventricular dysfunction. Child was admitted with that. And now Child is recovering. X-ray became better, not extubatable. All 4 pulses well felt. There is S3 gallop. Blood pressures are between 95 to 99 centile. To rule out Al-Kappa, this is a 3-year-old child. To rule out secondary causes of hypertension. So I definitely agree with this. So as you can see, we have given very minimal dose of inotropes, that is the dobutamine and milrinone. So milrinone is a vasodilator, dobutamine is a vasodilator. But despite of these medicines, the blood pressures are more than 95th centile here. So we have to take this as a pinch of salt and should not consider this as a response to the inotropes. So same thing was done. We thought that there is definitely a possibility of hypertension here. So blood pressure on 3rd day was 130/82, which was again more than 99 centile. Gradually we stopped all the inotropes, but blood pressure was ranging high. So evaluation for hypertension was done. And 70% of causes of hypertension in children are renovascular causes. Either there is a renal artery stenosis or there is a possibility of renal parenchymal disease. So always rule out this cause as a most common. So there is a renal artery Dopplers were done, which suggested that there is a severe renal artery stenosis, which is bilateral. Now you can see this. There is a right renal artery, which is severely obstructed at its origin. Left renal artery was further more obstructed, and even distally it was very small, which we could not even less than 2 millimeter in size. So there was congenital abnormality of the renal arteries. So you can see the right is more obstructed, but distally it was better. So finally, we have done the balloon dilatation and stenting to that. And once you treat that, the ventricular function becomes better. So now the ventricular function is better. Definitely this child will again need surgery for the renal arteries, left and right. But as a palliative, this measure worked very well so that we could extubate her. So disproportionate response to the inotropes should be considered. When you are giving the inodilators like milrinone or vasodilators like dobutamine, the blood pressure should not go beyond 95th centile. So for this matter, if you look at the monitor which is showing 130/70, don't be very happy, okay, the blood pressures are normal. So what we advise in our unit, always chart for that age and for that height what is the optimal blood pressure. And beyond 95th centile, if it is going, you have to consider whether there is an underlying cause of hypertension is there or not. So disproportionate response to blood pressure should be assessed. And evolving clinical picture is hallmark. Like on admission, pressures were very low, that was 80, because she was in frank heart failure. And be careful in starting AC inhibitors in this condition. Whenever we taper off inotropes, we have a habit of starting AC inhibitors. Now imagine if we have started AC inhibitors, she would have landed in frank bilateral renal dysfunction because there is a bilateral renal artery stenosis. So this is a condition where AC inhibitors are contraindicated. So better to be very sure, extubate them, assess ultrasound if it is needed, and take a Doppler of it, and then only commence medicines. Otherwise, they can be really detrimental in these patients. Now, let us look at the next case. This is a 11 days old baby who was apparently all right, and 37 weeker, LSCS delivered, birth weight was 3.5 kg, discharge on 3rd day. Baby had presented with lethargy, poor feeding to the pediatrician, and because he found that there is a tachypnea, was referred for cardiac evaluation. So with us, there was again the shock was present, there was S3, there was tachycardia, so all the features of heart failure. You can see the X-ray, there is massive cardiomegaly, there is bilateral effusion, child is intubated. Very small lung shadow is seen because of the pulmonary edema. And look at the X-ray, severely depressed ventricular function. There is severe MR, severe TR. IVC is congested. So tell me, how would you like to proceed this? So should we go to next slide, or somebody wants to take up this case? Palak, Kalyan? Hello. So I got a response that coronaries needs to be seen. Yes, but 11 days of child Al-Kappa presentation is bit unlikely. Still, we should see that. Then always first try to see the ECG apart from structural causes. So you can see what is the ECG here. Is it good for the 11 days old child?
No, ma'am. In this, ma'am, there is more of left ventricular predominance for 11-day-old child.
Yes. So there is left axis deviation. See here, very tall R wave in lead 2 and AVF, and very tall R wave in V6. So normally a 11 days old child should have right ventricular dominance. So
Yes,
here
ma'am.
hardly seen R wave, again a significant S wave in V1, and in V6 very tall R wave, almost 4 boxes, and small S wave in V6 that suggests that it is predominantly left ventricular forces. So there is something underlying is going on. It is not just a ventricular dysfunction, a biventricular dysfunction. Otherwise, both forces should have been there. So again, this child was started on all the inotropes. There was an improvement hemodynamically, but the function was not improving and we were unable to extubate. So again, we had a doubt whether we are dealing with the high underlying hypertension in this case, because there are such a high forces of such a high left ventricular forces are seen. So the blood pressure, again, it was going beyond what is 95th centile. Unless you mark this on the chart for the given baby, I'm telling you, you're going to miss the hypertension in younger children, because you may find 90 by 50, 100 by 40, mean of around 60. You will be very happy with those with those pressures. But unless you chart them critically, look at the ECG, look at the posterior wall of the LV, you will miss the underlying hypertensive causes. Now look at here, the pressures are around just 95 and around 65, but still it is more than 95th centile for the newborn. So again, we thought that with that background of ECG, we thought that we are dealing with a cause of a cause of hypertension. So we started this child on SNP because there was significant tachycardia. The labetalol infusion was also started to control the pressures. And then on the investigations, see what did we found. Again, we did renal artery Dopplers and the renal parenchymal disease was ruled out. Again, the proteinuria was ruled out by the ratio, which was 2.3, but there is significantly elevated T3, which was 651, T4 11, and the normal range is so low, and TSH was actually undetectable. So this was the case of hyperthyroidism. So child was actually suffering from thyroid storm, and because of that, there was tachycardia, hypertension, and finally the left ventricular shutdown. And then he presented to us with the shock. So unless you pick up this subtle little findings, there is a good chance that you may just label them as ventricular dysfunction, cardiomyopathies, and then eventually just treat them as with the conventional medicines. So we also did the free T3 because that is the hallmark. Whenever you find the T3, T4 which are elevated, you have to document by free T3 and T4 levels, which was significantly elevated. And then the TSH receptor antibody, because most of the time in this situation, the TSH receptor antibodies, which are gamma globulins, IgG, is transferred from the maternal to the fetus through the placenta. So mother is having the TSH receptor antibody, which transfers. And as the effect of these antibodies are weaned off by 3 to 6 months, they improve drastically. Only this initial few months, we need to pick up these cases at appropriate time and treat them appropriately. So look at the level of TSH receptor antibody. It was 39.3, a very high level. And over the follow-up, when the treatment was given, it became normal to 0.7 in just matter of 10 to 15 days. So normal level is 1.75. So after the treatment, there is a ventricular hypertrophy, as we can see here. and the function was normalized. So we gave this patient labetalol and methimazole, that is the treatment of choice in these patients, and Lugol's iodine. A symptomatic hyperthyroidism should receive methimazole and Lugol's iodine. And to remove the sympathetic hyper response due to hyperthyroidism, we should give beta blocker, that is a propranolol. But here the blood pressures were not under control even with the highest dose of propranolol. That's why we kept this baby on labetalol and he responded very well to that. So what happens in hyperthyroid storm in a summary? So there will be B cell which is producing TSH receptor antibodies, and it will attach into the thyroid, into the TSH receptor of the thyroid on the thyroid gland, which will continuously go on producing T3 and T4, and because of that there will be a negative feedback to the pituitary gland to suppress the TSH level. So elevated T3 T4 along with the TSH receptor antibodies and very low level of TSH is the hallmark of this, and they start presenting with poor feeding, lethargy, and sweating, these kind of substrate. All cases may not have proptosis. Some of the newborn may present only with proptosis, but not necessarily all patients may have that. So very important newborn presentation of hyperthyroid storm is by ventricular dysfunction and as a heart failure. So please remember this point, and if you find any case during newborn age group, try to rule out the hyperthyroidism. So in this substrate, as I said, the symptomatic hyperthyroidism should receive methimazole, which prevents the peroxidase conversion of iodine, and that's how it reduces the further formation of T3 and T4. Now look at this case. He's a 2-year-old boy who is born of consanguineous marriage and referred to us with SOB, and X-ray there was cardiomegaly. So you can see that obviously there is a cardiomegaly, and this is what is the ECG. So I want someone to read this ECG.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm Pavan.
Yeah, Pavan.
It's a 12-lead ECG.
Yes.
With paper speed is not seen, but I assume that it is normal paper speed and the standardization is normal.
Yes.
Rate is around 120 per minute.
Yes.
Regular sinus rhythm, normal sinus rhythm, and P wave axis is normal, but there is inverted P waves in V1 suggestion of left atrial enlargement.
Very good.
And QRS axis is 0 degrees, like 0 to 60, like plus 30.
QRS axis is around close to 0, but not exactly 0. It's around 30 to 40.
PR interval is normal.
What is very striking in this
very tall T waves in the chest leads.
Exactly. So this massive, we have always heard about this Himalayan P waves, but I'm showing you here Himalayan T waves. So this massively tall T waves of almost, which are reaching some 7 to 8 boxes, are probably unmissable in this situation. Apart from that, we all know that there are very prominent ventricular forces are there.
Yes.
So what I would suggest that there is definitely ventricular dominance, a left ventricular dominance. There is no R wave, significant R wave in V1 that should be still there in a 2-year-old child. Very tall R wave in V6, and as Pavan has pointed out, very tall T waves in all the leads from V3 onwards. It is seen. What is one more striking, if you have calculated QTC, as you can see that the J point, it's very small. The T is just after QRS. So when I calculated QTC, it was actually 330 milliseconds. So it is, you have always heard about the long QTC, but this is one situation where you are finding a short QTC. So let's see, this is very interesting case actually. And this is what is the echo of this baby. So again, Pavan, can you read this echo?
Yes. it's an apical 4-chamber view showing dilated left ventricle.
Dilated and
Dilated dysfunction.
yes, dilated and dysfunctional. What else?
Endocardium looks hyperechogenic.
Okay. What about the posterior wall? Usually, if it is a myocarditis or some viral insult has happened to the ventricles, the posterior wall becomes thinned out. But here, what do you think about the lateral wall and posterior wall?
It appears thick.
It appears thickened. So this is not just a dilated ventricle, but it is a hypertrophied ventricle. Here mass is not seen, otherwise you can calculate mass also, and I'm sure it is more than +2 z-score. So and you can also see the posterior wall also here. The posterior wall, if you see, it's almost 1 centimeter in a 2-year. It's significant hypertrophy is there. So there is a hypertrophy, and there is a ventricular dysfunction, and then there is a dilatation is also seen. So with that tissue Doppler, you can see it's almost reaching 8. So it cannot be viral myocarditis because a tissue Doppler of 8, E by A, more than 8 to 10, E and A around 8 to 10, with posterior walls of 1 centimeter and dilated ventricular dysfunction. So there is something else we are dealing with this patient here. So I want to emphasize here that this particular ECG, that is hyper tall T waves and short QTC with ventricular hypertrophy and ventricular dysfunction, this fits nothing but else into the primary carnitine deficiency. These are the hallmark of primary carnitine deficiency. So it was suspected, and then the TMS was sent, and you can see here all the ratios are significantly lower in value, which suggests that this child was suffering from primary carnitine deficiency. Again, this is a very important case to pick up, and if you pick up on time, you supplement them with carnitine, which is very easily available drug, their ventricular function can become normal. And as I said, it's a genetically inherited disease, autosomal recessive, so family members should also be screened. In fact, there are a few couple of case reports where they have done already the transplant for the ventricular dysfunction, and later on they found out that actually the child was suffering from primary carnitine deficiency. Very simple test. A clue is ECG, a hyper tall T wave and short QTC. And if you find a ventricular hypertrophy along with the dysfunction, then you need to suspect that it is a primary carnitine deficiency. So what happens in this? The OCTN2 receptor, which is there on the mitochondria, which is there on the cell, and which facilitates the inflow of the carnitine into the cell for the further oxidation, is completely blocked, and that's why the precursors of that gets deposited on the kidneys, in the brain, and on the heart. So they may present as a renal failure, they may have a variety of MRI changes, but the cardiac manifestation is more prominent, and it can be referred to us to rule out ventricular dysfunction, and on X-ray there might be a cardiomegaly. So this baby again was supplemented with carnitine and was doing well. So again, we have sent this test. Let us see what its report comes. You can do a genetic study also for this, so that in family you can counsel them appropriately. So now let's see the next case. This is a 2-month-old baby, complaint of feeding difficulty, cardiomegaly, and on X-ray there is a tachycardia, gallop rhythm. But what was striking here, that there are warm extremities and pounding pulses. And this is what is the cry of the baby. So anybody wants to take up this?
Ma'am, shall I read the X-ray, ma'am?
Yes, please read the X-ray, and then I'll show you the echo.
Okay, so ma'am, this is a chest X-ray AP view with it's a over-penetrated film, ma'am, and it looks like a non-rotated film. Situs, I can't see the fundus shadow properly, but it is levocardia. The CT ratio is around maybe 0.6. Then
maybe bronchial situs, you can comment whenever you cannot see abdominal situs. Try to look for bronchial situs. So if you find that the right
Looks
bronchus is
situs-
normal, then
Yes, ma'am.
maybe situs is,
Bronchitis solitis.
yes.
Then apart from that, ma'am, the looks like LV type of apex. Then there is no right atrial enlargement. But if we see here, there is a prominence in the right upper border. There is a prominence, which might be because of the dilated pulmonary artery.
Yes, there is a dilated pulmonary, but I think it is little bit rotated film because the clavicle is almost touching the vertebral column, but on the left side, it is not. Can you
Okay.
see that, Palak?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So it is rotated on the left side. That's why probably you are not completely seeing the right heart border, and it has gone little bit retrosternal. What about this cry?
Ma'am, this is grunt. The baby is grunting.
Yeah, and then there is a weak cry. So
Yeah.
a child who is probably you're suspecting as a ventricular dysfunction, cardiomyopathy, but has got warm extremities and bounding pulses. Is it concordant, this clinical finding?
No, ma'am.
So this is not concordant. Something is not going with just pure ventricular dysfunction because the cardiac output comes down, and then you should have cold extremities and feeble pulses usually with ventricular dysfunction. Now read the echo.
The first echo is an apical four-chamber view, ma'am, which is showing dilated right atrium and right ventricle, and there is a TR which we can see with severe RV dysfunction.
Yes. And pH?
Yes, ma'am. pH is there because TR gradient is like around 4
4 meters.
per second. Yes, ma'am.
And this is
Then-
the foramen oval.
Yes,
Comment
ma'am.
on that.
Ma'am, this is a subcostal short axis view, which is
Hmm.
showing there is right to left shunt, ma'am, across the foramen oval.
Very good. And what about this?
Ma'am, there's a tiny PDA here, which is also shunting right to left.
Yes. So this obviously everything suggests that there is a
Severe-
suprasystemic right ventricular pressures because duct is also right to left shunt with severe right ventricular dysfunction, and that's the gradient across duct, which is predominantly right to left shunt. So what do you want to do?
Ma'am, this can be one of the possibilities. Where was the patient from, ma'am, the geographical location?
They are from a village.
Okay, so ma'am, one of the possibilities can be thiamine deficiency, ma'am.
Yes.
Very.
So yes. So an infant who is predominantly presenting with a right heart failure, but having features of bounding pulses and warm extremities, having weak cry, they are from village or probably farmers, and as certain geographical areas with recent history onset of deterioration. Probably this is a thiamine deficiency, and once thiamine injection in this situation acts both therapeutic and diagnostic, because if you give 10 mg per kg of thiamine injection to them over 30 minutes and do again a scan in 2 hours, you will find a drastic difference. You will find that this is not the same baby's heart. So same injection was given, no other medicine, no sildenafil, Lasix, nothing was given, and now this is the this baby's heart. So foramen has become left to right shunt. TR, we cannot Doppler it correctly now because the function is totally normalized. The quantification of TR has reduced. It is only mild now. And look at the duct. Duct is left to right now.
Right shunting.
And there is a continuous flow across the duct, which suggests that the PA pressures are almost normal now. And look at the ventricular function here.
That is also normal.
So ventricular function is normalized. So this injection acts like both therapeutic and diagnostic. So any infant, try to ask who is presenting with the right heart failure, try to take the dietary history from the family, from the parents, and then you may have a clue towards the thiamine deficiency. Unlike in adults where there is a thiamine deficiency still possible, and it is mostly seen with the alcoholics because of their reduced intake of vital vitamins leads to the again thiamine deficiency, but they present with the left heart failure more commonly. But in infants, what we have observed that the presentation is more of the right heart failure because there is an increased flow. It is a kind of hyperdynamic circulation which causes the shear stress on the pulmonary vasculature, And because of that, they present with acute onset pulmonary hypertension, which is poorly tolerated with the right ventricle, and that's why they have this right ventricular failure. So this is the post-thiamine echo. So learning is dietary history is very important, and clinical examination of warm extremities, prominent pulses, despite of pH, are the clues towards the beriberi. So this is the next child who is again presented at 15 days of life. He was completely all right, but presented with shock and required ventilation. And this is the X-ray. That there is a cardiomegaly, ET tube is in place, and there is a complete left lung collapse because of the cardiomegaly, and this is the heart. So barely contracting ventricles, severely depressed LVEF 10 to 15%, and IVC is congested. So what do you want to do next? Coronaries are normal. Kalyan, do you want to take up?
Yes, ma'am. Do we have a ECG of this child, ma'am?
Yes. So this is the ECG of the child.
Okay. This is a 12 lead ECG with normal standardization and normal speed. The narrow complex tachycardia is there, ma'am, with a heart rate of 180. Yeah, up to 200, ma'am.
Up to 200 is the heart rate.
Yes, ma'am. P waves.
So all heart failure will have tachycardia, no? So this is the tachycardia because of heart failure. Is it true?
No, ma'am.
Then justify why it's not. Why it's not sinus tachycardia.
Sinus tachycardia should include normal P waves with following the QRS complexes.
Yes. So a very important point for the sinus tachycardia is P axis should be normal. So where to see P waves? So whenever you find out the ECG like this, where 1 and AVF, you can see that the P waves are not nicely seen. So actually P waves you can see better in 1, 2 and AVF. 2, it should be very obviously seen because the direction of electrical signal is towards the lead 2. So it should be very prominently seen in lead 2 and AVF, but you are not seeing there. So where else you can see then P waves?
In lead 3, we can see the
lead 3, but it's not very clear, no?
Yes, ma'am. V1.
Then yes, V1, very good. So again, V1 is a good site to assess for P waves. So what are you finding in lead 1? V1, sorry.
We are seeing a P waves just after the QRS complexes.
Yes.
So it could be a short RP tachycardia.
Short RP tachycardia. So what is the definition of short RP tachycardia? Vinod has taken class on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Then? So for all practical purposes, I will tell you, if you're finding P waves hidden within the QRS complex, that means it's a short RP tachycardia. Much lesser than the 70 milliseconds is the short RP tachycardia. Towards 70 milliseconds, it becomes the long RP tachycardia. So here you can distinguishly see P waves after R wave. That means it's a long RP tachycardia. And normally the PR here, as you can see in lead 1, first there is a R wave, then there is an inverted P wave, and then that is a T wave. So actually P is falling just after the V1. So this is a long RP tachycardia. Now, what are the causes of long RP tachycardia? Again, the sinus tachycardia is also a long RP tachycardia. So a heart failure patient will have sinus tachycardia, right? So now you have to differentiate whether it's a sinus tachycardia or it is the abnormal atrial tachycardia or PJRT. These are some of the long RP tachycardias. How would you see that if it is a long RP tachycardia?
P wave morphology needs to be assessed, ba?
Yes. So inverted P waves in V1 for this newborn is not normal, right? Because it's a newborn, it is just a 10 days old child. Then the another site of looking for P waves is AVR and AVL. So it should be inverted in AVR and positive in AVL. So again, that is not there. So that's why this is not the normal sinus tachycardia, but instead it is a atrial tachycardia which is going on to the baby. And that's why there is a possibility of tachycardiomyopathy. Now, what happens in tachycardiomyopathy is the vagal stimulus is lost. And that's why the diastolic period is reduced. And that's why pulmonary filling is impaired. And because of that, they present with the ventricular dysfunction. So in this patient, there is a long RP tachycardia is going on. Now, long RP tachycardia is usually poorly responsive to the medications. And if it is like the atrial tachycardia, which is more commonly an automaticity rather than re-enteral re-enteral tachycardia will very nicely respond to the DC cardioversion, or the adenosine. But these tachycardias, which are of automatic origin, will not respond to DC or adenosine. So then you need to add on the various antiarrhythmic medications very carefully, because there is already severe ventricular dysfunction is present. And then try to control the heart rate. Just control of heart rate in this substrate will achieve the better ventricular function. You may not achieve the sinus rhythm immediately, but just the control of heart rate is good to achieve hemodynamic stability. So this patient, we started on beta blocker. However, we gave DC cardioversion, but we knew that he's not going to respond to that. Then beta blocker and flecainide. Oral flecainide in newborn has got good conversion rate to sinus rhythm, even in atrial tachycardias. So that's where the flecainide was started. So after 5 days, now look at this ECG. So there is a positive, it's positive in 1 and positive in AVF. That means it's a normal axis. And then again, it is inverted in AVR and positive in AVL. So that suggests that there is a normal sinus rhythm with the control rate is there now. And after 14 days, once look at the ventricular function now, it's completely normalized. So it is very gratifying to identify tachycardiomyopathy, because if you control the heart rate, they do very well. Now, the mechanism of ventricular dysfunction, as I said, that there is a reduced diastolic time, which will further reduce the coronary perfusion and cause impaired myocardial perfusion. And because there is a reduced diastolic filling volume, the stroke volume is further reduced. And then there is a demand-supply mismatch, which leads to the acidosis and also increased ventricular EDP. And then they present with pulmonary edema and ventricular dysfunction. So control of heart rate is very essential in all these cases. So tachycardia is seen in all heart failure, but make sure it is sinus. So to prove it's a sinus tachycardia, it should be positive in 1N AVF. Abnormal P-axis merged within QRS complexes are the features of atrial tachycardias, and they are often resistant to a lot of antiarrhythmic medication. So you need to adjust them categorically and carefully so that you don't produce even the drug toxicity, but to achieve the desired level. And rate control is aim of treatment initially, and then try to go ahead for the medicines which can convert them into the sinus rhythm. So this is an 8-year-old girl who is from Nagpur, and again he's diagnosed as dilated cardiomyopathy since 1 year of age, and she's on lot of anti cardiomyopathy medicines. So this is the ventricular function, and then this is a tissue Doppler, and these are two Dopplers I have, time intervals are been taken. Somebody wants to read these time intervals? Palak?
Ma'am,
There is a ventricular dysfunction
yes, ma'am.
and
This,
LV is dilated.
yeah, LV is dilated with severe ventricular dysfunction.
Yes.
Then, if we see, ma'am, the tissue Dopplers that we have taken,
Yeah.
then the E,
Yeah,
E
you
wave
can see this
is
wave.
small as compared to A.
Yes.
So there is some amount of diastolic dysfunction which is there.
Very good. Very good.
And if we see here, then there is almost equalization of E and A.
Yeah.
So maybe it is in stage 1 of diastolic dysfunction.
Yeah, so there is a diastolic dysfunction. Now,
And-
what are these Dopplers?
Ma'am, this Doppler, first Doppler is a pulse wave Doppler across the pulmonary valve.
Yes.
And
Yes,
the second
it is a
one,
P1.
and the second one is a pulse wave Doppler which we have taken across the aortic valve.
Yes. So
And
we have calculated a time interval, right?
have
So across aortic valve, I will read for you this value. It is 108 millisecond. Across pulmonary valve, it is 77 milliseconds.
okay.
So is it normal?
I think, ma'am, it's slightly delayed for the aortic valve.
And for pulmonary valve?
Pulmonary valve velocity time integral. It's almost normal, I think, ma'am. I don't
So
think that.
this is called as dyssynchrony between two ventricles. There are a lot of other parameters that you can check, but I am just focusing on interventricular dyssynchrony. So normally what happens, the conduction first goes through the left bundle, and that's why the aortic valve opening happens first. And then there is a very slight delay from the aortic valve opening into the pulmonary valve opening because of the slight delay of the right bundle, the electrical signal that goes through the right bundle. So usually Q to aortic valve is lesser than Q to pulmonary valve opening. But if you find this difference more than 40 milliseconds, that means there is a significant interventricular dyssynchrony is happening. And in fact, here the pulmonary valve is opening first, and then the aortic valve is opening. So this is a reverse phenomenon is happening. So again, this is not normal. So there is a ventricular dyssynchrony is there. So I just emphasize this very simple Doppler to explain you that simple echocardiogram, not strain, stress, I'm not doing that, but a simple echocardiogram will explain you that there is a electrical dyssynchrony is happening between the two ventricles. So again, this is not normally the feature of idiopathic, dilated cardiomyopathy. Although in adults they describe, but in children it is less commonly known. So look at the ECG now. What are you finding?
Ma'am, this is a 12-lead ECG with the normal standardization of limb leads and chest leads. The heart rate is around 100 per minute.
Very
Then,
good.
if we see, ma'am, it is a wide complex. There are wide QRS complexes,
Very
and
good.
it is regular.
Yeah.
And we see, ma'am, then there is slight upslurring which is seen in some leads. Like
Which lead?
it is seen in lead AVL. It is seen.
Yes,
it is
that is marked.
one. It is
In
seen in
AVL,
one,
it is marked. It is seen in
one.
lead 1. Very good.
V4, V5, V6 also it is seen.
Yes, there is very clearly slurring is seen in the upright limb of the QRS complex. It's seen in the AVL. It is seen in lead 1. It is seen here in V5, V6. So what is the diagnosis? And what is this morphology actually?
Ma'am, this is WPW syndrome with aberrant pathway.
Yes, so
And
very good. This is
it is antidromic conduction.
Yes, so there is a WPW syndrome in this patient, which is and with the pathway is happening through the accessory pathway. And then I have just marked again all the delta waves here. So what I want to emphasize is we all know that the WPW syndrome is known to cause re-entrant tachycardia. And during tachycardia, it is possible to see ventricular dysfunction. But this echo I have kept to explain you that even without the tachycardia episodes, they can have this ventricular dysfunction. And reason is because of the dysynchrony that happens because of the accessory pathway. So as I was explaining, normally there is some delay which is seen between P to QRS. But because of the accessory pathway and pre-excitation, this delay is not seen. Especially when there is a right posterolateral pathways, the right conduction happens faster than the left. So what will happen? The conduction will first come onto the right ventricle, and through this it will be conducted into the left ventricle. Whereas in normal AV node, it will come from the AV node, then bundle of His, and then right branch and the left branch. And then left branch will conduct into the left ventricle. So that conduction is more faster and it's a synchronous conduction. But in accessory pathway, the conduction transmits from one ventricle to another. So because of this, the ventricular dyssynchrony is noticed, and that leads to the ventricular dysfunction. So even without the episodes of tachycardia, they can present with the ventricular dysfunction. And the results are very rewarding if you just ablate this. So for pre-excitation syndrome, even though there are no episodes of tachycardia, but if you're finding that there is a ventricular dysfunction, then that is probably the indication for ablation of this accessory pathway so that to restore their normal ventricular synchrony. So I hope this is clear. So again, in most of the cases of ventricular dysfunction, if you look at carefully ECG and do careful Dopplers, you will get a good clue towards its management. Now, whenever all of you say we can stop, because there are a few more cases, but whenever you say we can stop it. So this is a 5-month-old baby who has history of breathing difficulty. Again, heart failure symptoms are there. There is a cardiomegaly. Now I want somebody to take up this ECG. This is the pediatric cardiologist diagnostic clue. So Pawan or Kalyan, who is taking?
I will take.
Okay.
It's a 12-lead 4-channel ECG with normal paper speed and normal standardization.
Very good.
Its heart rate is around 150 per minute, regular. P-wave is not seen properly.
Which is not seen properly?
P-wave.
P-wave is seen in AVR. Can you see that's inverted here, the arrow?
Yes, ma'am. Lead
And
2
then
also
it's
it is
positive here. And then lead 2 also it is seen.
It's
There is
seen,
a
yes,
T wave and then that's a P wave.
So this PR interval is 0.12 seconds.
Yes, yes.
And in QRS, there are Q waves or deep Q waves are seen in V6 and AV lead 1 also.
Lead 1, there is a Q wave, very good. And then the Q waves are seen in V6 also.
V6. Yes.
Where else you can see the Q waves?
AVL,
AVL.
deepest.
Yes, the deepest Q wave is seen in AVL. Is it normal, Pawan?
No, it is pathologic Q waves.
It is pathological Q waves. So if it is just volume overload, then like you are seeing Q waves in V5, V6, I'm saying this is just a volume overload condition. So how it is different Q waves here?
I would expect tall peak T waves.
Then you won't find Q waves in 1 and AVL. Suppose just VSD, PDAP windows, there might be deep Q waves in V5 and V6, more than 3 millimeters, but you won't find such a deep Q wave in 1 and AVL, right?
Yes.
So what do you think? Then there is a echo, I'll show you. Look at this echo. This is the echo.
Grossly dilated dysfunctional left ventricle and dilated left atrium, and there is hyperechogenic papillary muscle.
Very good. So what is your diagnosis?
Most probably anomalous origin of left coronary artery.
Yes.
Albany.
So this is Alcapa. You can see there is a severe ventricular dysfunction and hyperechogenic papillary muscle was seen. RCA is dilated, and you can see here the left coronary is arising from a pulmonary artery. So again, Alcapa, a very important structural cause, and if you repair this on time, the ventricular function will normalize over the couple of months. So again, Q waves in 1N AVL are pathognomic. Apart from that, STT changes. Can you see lead to? There are STT changes. V6, there are STT changes. So Q waves in 1N AVL are pathognomic of L-kappa. So any LV dysfunction in an infant is an L-kappa unless proved otherwise. Try to look for that. If you're not sure, take opinion of another cardiologist or call them again after 24 hours. But make sure that the coronaries are normal, because if you miss this, it is very devastating effect on the child. 1 year mortality is almost 90%. So we can stop here because it's already
Yeah,
5
thank you very much, Shweta. It's a really wonderful interactive session. A lot of new things, new points. I hope it's useful to all the students. Somebody is asking, Deepa, thiamine responsive pulmonary hypertension. Would you like to take that chat box?
I'll go to chat box.
Is thiamine responsive pulmonary hypertension same as beriberi?
Yes. Yes. So if you have found that there is a severe pulmonary artery hypertension and after thiamine it has become normal, then there is no need to give that child on sildenafil, Lasix and other medications, but to supplement baby, but also to supplement mother, because they are most of the time exclusively breastfed children. And because the mother is deficient into the thiamine, the baby has acquired deficiency. And usually what happens that because there is a delayed weaning, it can continues to have till 7-8 months of age also. So dietary advice to mother, because tablets are not going to help them lifelong. So simple measures, how to wash the rice, take 10 minutes from your busy OPD, but explain them. Because if you miss explaining them, there is a possibility that next baby may come with total shock and heart failure and you may not be able to revive that child. So a very simple medicine, but it's effective and counseling is important.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm going to end the session. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Shweta. Thank you very much.